If you were gone from my class when we talked about the setup comma and the pause comma, this video is for you. Take notes on what I'm about to explain because we took notes in class. And if you missed those notes, it's important for you to have them because you can use them on the quiz. So take notes on this stuff. It will help you. If you were here, you should already have the notes, but maybe this is just a refresher for you. Otherwise, let's jump in. We're talking about commas. So create a new page in your notes called commas. You should also add it to your contents in the front of your notebook. Today, we're just talking about sentence setups for commas. We're talking about two kinds of commas. Not every kind of commas. Commas have a lot of uses. We're just talking about a couple of them today. Before we get started, keep this in mind. Grammar rules are tools for the art of communication. They're not laws for the science of writing. Language is an art. That's why the class is called English Language Arts, not the science of the English language or something like that. Science, math, that's where you study. If you do ABC in the right order, you'll get the exact same result every time. English, speaking, writing, any language really, is an art. There are many ways to do it, and you'll get many different effects depending on how you use it. So that's what we're talking about today. As a warm-up, before we jump in, look at this sentence. After we go to the store, we should get some food. Does this look right? Does it sound right? How about this one? In Fahrenheit 451, Montag is unhappy. Or this one. When Liesel meets Rudy, she doesn't like him very much. Okay? I don't know how you feel about those sentences, but you might have some gut feelings about what they need, what they don't need. We'll look at it, okay? The first section in your notes, level 1 heading should be the setup comma. Now, what is the setup comma? Before we jump into what exactly it is, the rule is always place a comma after a sentence's setup. That kind of explains what it is, but you'll have to see an example to know what that means. But for now, definitely write this down. Always place a comma after a sentence's setup, okay? So this sentence from earlier, after we go to the store, we should get some food. The setup is after we go to the store. So we say after we go to the store, comma, we should get some food. You could think of it like the setup for a joke. A blonde, a brunette, and a redhead walk into a McDonald's. Okay, so that just tells you what's going on. Now that was a complete sentence, but it sets up the joke. Once you do the setup, now you can get to the actual joke. Once you do the setup, you can get to the actual point of the sentence. We should get some food. In Fahrenheit 451, comma, Montag is unhappy. If you read the sentence, you probably would naturally pause there even without a comma. In Fahrenheit 451, Montag is unhappy. You can probably hear that I take like half a breath there. But when Liesel meets Rudy, she doesn't like him very much. You can hear the comma there because, again, commas are not necessarily for rhythm when you're writing. So don't write the rhythm in. Instead, read the rhythm out when you're reading the sentence. But when you're writing it, that's not what commas are for. So I always place a comma after a sentence's setup. And we just saw 3 examples of setups. The comma for the setup, the reason we do this is because it says to readers, time for the real sentence. So if you think about it like this, this is a man named Frodo. I just made that name up, okay? Frodo is standing on the setup for the sentence, right? He wants to get to the real sentence. But look at that. Look at that wall he's got to climb. He's not very athletic. He can't jump very high. He's kind of weak-legged. And his upper body, nothing there. He can't pull himself up. So how is he going to get from the setup to the sentence? You guessed it, a comma ramp. Okay? The comma is like a ramp that says, now let's move from the setup to the main thing, which is the sentence itself. Thank God for the comma. So I'm going to let you pause this video and practice adding a comma here. For me, I would put a comma in the first sentence after the word game. So it says, after the game, comma, the students rushed to the locker room. Pause the video. Try it for sentences 2 through 6. Okay, unpausing the video. Sentence 2, hopefully you did, in the middle of the night, comma, the fire alarm went off. Because the fire alarm went off is a sentence on its own. In the middle of the night is not a sentence. So if I come up to you and I say, hey, in the middle of the night, you'll say, in the middle of the night, what? You're expecting more. That's the setup for this sentence, okay? Number 3, before the final bell, comma, everyone packed up their materials. Number 4, Across the street from the school, comma, a new building is under construction. Number 5, with great care, comma, the scientist handled the fragile sample. Number 6, during the winter months, comma, many animals migrate south. Now what you'll notice is that these setups will tell us where something is happening, when something is happening, how something is happening, in what manner something is happening, right? How often something is happening. Those are the things that setups will tell you. Okay, now there are real life examples of this. This is an ad I saw on good old Facebook Marketplace. An old comfortable rocker recliner. Now it's kind of old, kind of torn up. I'm not going to get it even though it's free because it's gross and I don't want it. But here's the description. While this is an older chair, it is still comfortable. Now think to yourself, should this have a comma in it? The answer is yes, and it should go after the word chair. While this is an older chair, it is still comfortable. While this is an older chair, comma, it is still comfortable. The setup is telling you about the chair while, meaning at the same time as this is being an old chair, even though it's old, it's still comfortable despite being old, which, I don't know. A lot of old chairs are more comfortable than new chairs, so it doesn't always make enough sense, but we're just talking about the grammar here, not the thinking. There are 2 types of setup. You should write these things down. Number 1, the prepositional phrase. And if you don't know what that is, it's a phrase beginning with a preposition, if that wasn't obvious. Now, you might think, what the heck is a preposition? You learned it in 6th grade, but I'll remind you anyway. It is a word that links one part of the sentence to another. It is a basic definition. Very, very basic. Probably not a sufficient definition, but it'll work for now. Notice, though, that it's not a word that links one sentence to another. That's another video where we talk about a comma plus fanboys or a semicolon or just a plain old period. We're not linking 2 sentences. We're linking 2 parts of a sentence. That's generally what a preposition does, but a better definition might be just by looking at the word preposition. It starts with pre, which usually means before, and then position. So it's a word that comes before you can explain something's position, okay? We'll look at that in just a minute, some examples, but prepositional phrases are phrases that tell us where something happens. So in, under, next to, behind are a few examples. There are many more examples, right? But if it's before we're telling about position, we would say in the closet. In is the preposition, and in the closet is the prepositional phrase, okay? So a phrase that tells you where something happens, when something happens. So here are some phrases: at 5 o'clock, in the morning, on Thursday, after work, before noon, right? These are all prepositional phrases. So at, in, on, after, before, those are all prepositions. Direction is told by a prepositional phrase. To, toward, or through are prepositions that begin prepositional phrases. How something happens, with or without, are 2 examples of prepositions that will tell you about something, right? With great care, I set my son on the ground to change his diaper. You can tell I'm the dad of a 1-year-old. But this is what prepositional phrases tell us. Let's look at some examples. But first, I want you to try it. Before I give you the examples, try it. Write 4 sentences, each beginning with a prepositional phrase, and put a comma at the end of the prepositional phrase. Because I already showed you these examples way back here, okay? After the game, comma. Now, these aren't great mentors right now because there are no commas, but try and write 4 sentences like those that have commas after a prepositional phrase. Let the prepositional phrase start the sentence. Okay, continuing on with the video, feel free to pause it while you do that. But hopefully they're good. If you have questions about them, come talk to me. In class, we discussed everyone's sentences before moving on, which we just can't do in a video. But check it with someone else who's watching the video with you, maybe a parent, or just come talk to me. First type of setup, prepositional phrase. Second type of setup, introductory adverbs. So after all your notes on prepositional phrases, make a new second numbered point that is introductory adverbs. Now you probably remember that an adverb is a word that modifies a verb, and they usually end in ly, okay? If you have an adverb at the beginning of a sentence, you should put a comma afterwards. That's the rule. That's the basic rule for this kind of setup when it's just an adverb. So carefully, Blackbeard looked through his telescope. Carefully is the adverb, and so we put a comma after it. It's as simple as that. Carefully, Blackbeard looked through his telescope. Initially, comma, I thought we wouldn't get along. We have a comma after the adverb. Earlier, comma, the sun was down. Now, these adverbs are modifying the whole sentence because that's what adverbs can do. Adverbs can basically modify anything, almost anything. But these ones are modifying the entire sentence. Now, if you have the adverb at the end of the sentence, you don't use a comma. So if we look at the same sentences, we have Blackbeard looked through his telescope carefully. Carefully at the beginning really emphasizes the carefulness. Carefully at the end is kind of just, oh, here's some information, so you maybe can picture it a little bit. But when you start with carefully, the person reading it or hearing it will imagine a lot of carefulness going in because that's the first thing they see. I thought we wouldn't get along initially. The sun was down earlier. Okay, so these sentences, it just depends on what you're trying to emphasize, why you would pick one over the other. But if you choose to have the adverb in the front, because again, these are tools for communication, not rules. But the tool for communication is put the adverb in the beginning. The rule is put a comma after it if you do. Here are some more practice sentences. This one should be really easy. Figure out where the comma should go in these 6 sentences. Feel free to pause the video and try this yourself. Okay, hopefully you figured out it was carefully, comma, initially, comma, eventually, comma, quietly, comma, suddenly, comma, unfortunately, comma. So a comma after the first word in each sentence because that's what we're learning. Okay, pretty straightforward. Write 3 of your own sentences now and have each one of them begin with an adverb and be sure to put a comma at the end of the introductory adverb. So after the adverb, add a comma. Take a second and try it. Hopefully you paused the video. We're moving on. So we talked about a rule earlier. Here's a more precise rule. Always place a comma after a long or meaningful setup at the beginning of a sentence. That's the official rule. A lot of people have, I shouldn't say it's the official rule, but a lot of people have these guidelines like if your introductory phrase is more than 4 words long, then add a comma. But if it's shorter, then don't add a comma. That really muddies the waters. For now, I'm just going to tell you, add a comma after the setup for every sentence. That's going to keep it easy for you. This is only 8th grade. If you want to get into the exceptions and different ways to do it, that'll come later. For now, we're just going to practice adding a comma after every setup. So the setup comma, use it. That's what I want you to know. Use the setup comma. After prepositional phrases and introductory adverbs, just stick a comma in there once the sentence has been set up. Okay. The next thing to know, though, is the pause comma. Avoid it. This is a non-rule. This is a rule about what you should not do. It's a common misuse of the comma. A lot of people use commas incorrectly, and they do it in this way. So we're going to talk about what the problem is. A comma is not to tell somebody to pause for effect or to take a breath. If you thought to yourself, a comma is for when you want a pause. No. When you're reading, you should pause when you see a comma. You should take half a breath, but that's for the sake of your hearers who can't see your sentence. Let's look at this a little more. The pause comma, the thing to keep in mind is it's about position and structure. That's what commas do. The position of them is important for the structure of a sentence. It's not about how something sounds. Now again, when you're reading something out loud and you see a comma, if you pause for half a breath, that's going to tell your listeners, oh, there's a comma there. And that tells me something about the structure of the sentence. I'm learning about how the sentence is structured and how to understand it based on their pause because I can't see the comma because all I'm doing is listening to them speak or read out loud. That's why a comma does signify a pause. But when you're writing, if you just think, maybe they'll need to take a breath here, don't just add a comma in there. Pay attention to the structure of the sentence and think about why you should add a comma. Let's talk about why you shouldn't first, okay? Rule number 1, commas are not breath marks. They're structure marks. We just talked about that, but you should write this in your notes. Rule number 1, commas are not breath marks. They're structure marks. Rule number 2, write this down as well. Never, ever put a comma between a subject and a verb. You probably remember from our notes on subjects and predicates that a subject is what the sentence is about. The verb is what the subject does. As we say in my class, the subject does the verb. Here are some bad sentences. Montag realized the truth. Now, if I'm speaking to you and I want to pause for effect, that's fine. I say, now Montag realized the truth. That pause is helpful for emphasizing something. But when we write it down, we should not have a comma there. It should just be, Montag realized the truth, no comma. These are bad sentences. The bearded man ate 83 hot dogs in 10 minutes, right? Again, bad sentence. We don't want a comma. This comma should not be here because it's splicing the subject and the verb. We don't want this. We don't put a comma between the subject, the bearded man, and the verb, ate. That's why this is a bad sentence. The dog, comma, bit my arm. Again, we have a comma between the subject, my dog, and the verb bit. These are bad sentences. Now, rule 3, never, ever put a comma between a verb and its complement, right? You probably remember a complement is what the verb happens to, right? That's an object. Or it's the adjective that describes the subject backwards. That's the complement of a linking verb, right? More on that somewhere else. But never put a comma between a verb and its complement. So Montag realized the truth. I can pause for effect when I'm speaking there, but in writing there should not be a comma there. It should just be Montag realized the truth, because we don't put a verb, or we don't put a comma between the verb realized and the complement the truth. The bearded man ate 83 hot dogs in 10 minutes. Sounds great to pause there, but we should not have a comma there. Again, these are all bad sentences. I can't stress this enough. My dog bit my arm. Bad. We've got a comma between the verb and the complement. Not good. Finally, an example from the ESV Bible. We have been given, comma, grace upon grace. Now, a lot of this comes from tradition, and it's in the legacy of the King James translation. And so the King James translation was phrased differently, and their comma sort of worked better in their translation. But in English, if this is being called the English Standard Version, use Standard English. There should not be a comma here. We have been given grace upon grace, period. No commas would be way better. All of these sentences with commas on here on the bullets, the bulleted points, these are bad sentences. Don't write like this. Memorize these rules. Make sure they're written down. Now, what I want you to do is identify the main verb in these sentences. This is going to be tough because these are long sentences. But identify the verb that the subject is doing. Remember, the subject does the verb happens to the object. We say that a lot in my class. The subject does the verb happens to the object. Identify the main verb in each of these sentences. One way to do that is to work backwards, figure out what the object is that the verb is happening to, and saying, well, what is happening to that object? And that should help you find the verb. Feel free to pause it and look at these. Okay, hopefully on number 1, you did made, right? Made, or made it impossible perhaps, but mostly made is the main verb because the subject is long. The subject is the constant noise from the parlor walls and advertisements. That's a lot of words, but that's the subject doing the verb made. Made it impossible for Mildred to think clearly. If you did think, that was a common mistake. So in class today, a lot of students said think, but it's actually made. Sentence 2. The idea that books change the way people think and feel. That's the idea. That's the subject. And what does that idea do? It scares. And whom does it scare? The government. Right? So if we work backwards, the government is the object. What's happening to the government? They're getting scared. Scared by what? By the idea that books can change the way people think and feel. Number 3, Montag's growing awareness of the emptiness in his life pushes him to question society. He is being pushed. And so push is the verb. Montag's growing awareness of the emptiness in his life is the subject that is doing the pushing of Montag. Pushing him where? Pushing him to question society, to do something. Sentence 4, the people who follow the rules without ever asking questions are rewarded in the society of the novel. Are rewarded is a 2-word verb. More on verb phrases in another video, how they can be multiple words for one verb. Number 5, the belief that happiness comes from comfort and entertainment. That's the belief, similar to number 2, the idea that something happens, or the belief that something happens. The belief that happiness comes from comfort and entertainment prevents. Prevents is the main verb, and it prevents people. Prevents people from what? From thinking deeply. Number 6, the long journey through war and loss, that's the subject. Forces is the main verb, the characters to mature quickly. The long journey from war and loss forces the characters to mature quickly. I hope this all makes sense, but here's why I have you identifying these parts of the sentence, okay? Because a lot of my students, and this is why I'm doing this lesson and why I'm making this video, is a lot of students in their recent essays would do this, okay? They would put commas in here like this. They would put the commas between the subject and the verb, which we just saw is a no-no. Look at rule 2, okay? We don't put commas between the subject and the verb, even when it's a really, really, really long subject. The constant noise from the parlor walls and advertisements, you might think, now's a good time to pause for breath. That's a long subject. Just to make it clear that this main part of the sentence is now over, I'll add a comma so that we know now we're moving to the verb. But that's an error. I appreciate you wanting to help your readers out, but they've just got to be good readers instead. The constant noise from the parlor walls and advertisements made it impossible for Mildred to think clearly. Now, to your ears, that might sound good with the pause, and I agree. I'd probably pause there if I were saying the sentence, but again, we don't add a comma just because a pause works. We add a comma for structure. So it should look more like this. The constant noise from the parlor walls and advertisements made it impossible for Mildred to think clearly. Now, for each of these 6 sentences, I've put a comma after the subject to show you this is what we should not do. And it's hard. It's hard to teach students what not to do by showing them a bunch of examples that are bad. Because when you see something a lot, you want to imitate it. So it's a risk to even show you all of this, I guess. But the point is, don't put a comma between the subject and the verb, or between the verb and its complement. If you memorize those things and can look at complicated sentences like these and figure out what the subject, verb, and complement are, you should know whether or not you need a subject. Or I mean, whether or not you need a comma. Dang it. Okay? But, again, here's the point. Commas are about position and structure, not how it sounds. They will affect how it sounds when you read out loud, but that's not what they are for. This is the Grammar Goldcrest. Hello, Grammar Goldcrest. He loves grammar and he loves students who take notes on grammar. So if you took notes on grammar from this video, he has a message for you. His message is, thank you.